Welcome to my address for this week. Those of you who have watched my previous addresses have already been introduced to our head boy, Osama, and also one of our two deputy head boys, Zophine. Well, this week I'm delighted to be able to introduce the other one of our two deputy head boys, Faznal.
Thank you, sir.
Today is Tuesday the 23rd of February 2021, and of course the big news this week is that at last we have a clear roadmap for a return to full-time teaching in the classroom, beginning in just a fortnight's time. Now, this is probably the most uplifting piece of news that we have received in school since this time last year, and I can assure you that it is with great happiness and enthusiasm that all of us at school are starting to plan for your son to return to school safely, to normal lessons, in a classroom, the same classroom as his teacher. News which fills me with unbounded joy. Faznal, how does it make you feel?
This makes me feel excited. I will be able to go back to the school environment, be in front of the teachers, see the learning take place right in front of me. But not only that, I will also be able to meet with the friends and teachers who are greatly missed.
Thank you, Faznal. I will talk a bit more in a moment about arrangements for your son to return to school. But in the meantime, it's really important that we all continue the excellent effort that we are making to keep up with our learning remotely. I've said before just how impressive the engagement of most of the students has been in this lockdown. And as your son keeps this up through the next couple of weeks, the return to the classroom teaching will be much easier and much more productive for him. So don't let him slacken off now. And I'll ask Faznal to remind us quickly of some of the features of remote learning that are most helpful.
Whilst remote learning continues on, it's important that we wake up and register at 8:45 every day. But not only that, we should also engage with the tasks which are set by our teachers, for example, the pre-recorded Loom lessons.
So, let's move on to thinking about March the 8th and beyond. Now, I want to talk very briefly about what we know for certain and also about what we are currently planning and that we will be able to tell you about a bit later. This is what we know for certain. All secondary school students will start returning to school during the week beginning Monday the 8th of March, with all students fully returned by Monday the 15th of March. Once students are fully returned, attendance at school will be compulsory. The same COVID security measures that were in place in September, arrangements like the one-way system and the year group bubbles, will remain in place, with a couple of important additions. The additions will be that students will be required to wear face masks in class as well as in the corridors, and also that students will be required to be tested for COVID regularly. This means that it's really important, if you haven't done so already, for you to return the consent form that we sent you, indicating if you are happy for your son to be tested. And this is what we are planning that we will be able to tell you about in more detail, either later this week or early next week. We are planning our arrangements for a phased return during the week beginning the 8th of March. The likelihood is that your son will need to attend school only for part of that first week, for COVID testing and for induction, with a full-time return beginning the following week. That's the week of the 15th of March. We are also planning how to carry out the required testing. All students will be expected to receive at least 3 tests, each one 3 to 5 days apart, during the first 2 weeks. And as you can imagine, that is quite a logistical challenge, which requires careful planning. We may need your son to come into school for a test as early as next week to get the process started, but we will let you know as soon as possible if that is the case. We know, of course, that the one thing that has made the difference, the one thing that is making it possible for schools and eventually the rest of society to open up again, is the incredibly impressive speed and efficiency of the vaccination rollout. And we owe an enormous debt of gratitude to the NHS and all those volunteers and others who are doing such a terrific job to get everyone vaccinated so quickly. And of course, the other group that deserves our unreserved admiration is the group of scientists and clinicians who have developed vaccines that are clearly very safe, very effective, and that have been developed at such speed. And I do encourage everyone in our wider school community and beyond, as soon as we get the chance to receive the vaccine, to take advantage of it, so that we can continue to hasten our return to normality. Another big piece of news that we're expecting later this week is further guidance from the Department for Education about the arrangements for submitting exam grades for Year 11 students this year. We will make sure that we contact you if your son is in Year 11 with an update about that just as soon as we know what those arrangements will be. In the meantime though, keep revising, because whatever the arrangements are, they will require us to submit a grade based on what we know your son knows, what he understands and what he can do in his various subjects. And that of course will need to be tested one way or another. I'd like to finish off today by asking Faznal to share his top tips with you about getting ready for a return to school. Faznal.
I have a few tips which will help with your return to school. Firstly, it's important that you have your mask with you at all times, preferably a reusable mask, as those don't harm the environment. Secondly, just as important as your mask, it's important that you have your full school uniform alongside your full school equipment, as these are your tools to learning. And finally, when you return to school, it's important that you remember the different entries to get into the school grounds.
Yeah, really important tips there. Thank you, Faznal. And remember, look out for a further update from us later this week or early next week. But for now, thank you for listening.